Greetings and salutations. Welcome to the EzeeLinux show. This is version 18.10, recorded February the 20th, 2018. I'm Joe Collins. In today's show, we're going to talk about XBT 2.2. We're going to talk about Canonical wanting some information from you, and we'll also talk about why you should never support anybody who runs Windows. Ever. That's later on. First, let's talk about XBT 2.2. That is the latest version of the external backup tool utility. That is actually something that I've written and I distribute. And you can go to EzeeLinux.com and you can take a look at the bash scripts page, and it will tell you everything that you ever wanted to know about XBT 2.0. If you are currently using XBT 2.1, I encourage you to make sure that you update to this latest version, because this just adds all kinds of safety measures in there and testing to make sure that things are working properly and better log reporting. And one of the big things that it's going to do now is that if you run XBT and it goes through a backup of the directories that it does back up, like etc and home, then if there's any errors reported, it will attempt to run that backup once again. That usually fixes any errors that do show up, and if it's successful, it will let you know. If it is not successful on the second attempt, it's going to make a note of that, and it's going to tell you that as well, and encourage you to go look at the log file and see what's causing those errors. Right now, the way it was in 2.1, it essentially just ran it once, and if there were any errors, it would let you know. And what I have found is that if you are using the program and then you go on to do other things like surf the web, or you're working on something else while it's doing a backup in the background, it can cause errors to pop up that are files vanishing. Basically, it saw a file when it started the backup and it planned to go ahead and make a copy of it, and then when it actually goes to do it, it goes away. A lot of times those are little system files, cache files. They're not really a big deal, but it will produce an error. So basically, it just goes back and does it again to make sure that it gets it the second time. And the other thing that has been put into the new XBT 2.2 is the fact that when you start the program, it now makes sure that the all-important rsync utility is installed. So it will actually go grab it and download it and install it if needs be. And the reason why it's doing that is because some people had said, hey, this program really relies on this utility. What if it's not there for some reason? Well, rsync and less and parted, which are the three main programs that it relies on, are all part of the standard Ubuntu basic install. So if you're running Ubuntu or anything based on Ubuntu, they should automatically be there. They are part of the system. They are system utilities. They're not optional. It's not something you need to install. And they're pretty much standard on any Linux distribution. But if for some reason they should happen to get uninstalled and you try and run the program, it's going to go and grab it for you and make sure that you have the latest version installed from the repositories. So that's basically what it does. So yes, it's a groovy little upgrade on an already very cool application, and that is XBT 2.2. Now, if you'd like to learn more about this, you can go to the bash scripts page. There's a link to a video here, and it will explain more about how the thing actually works. If you have not heard of XBT up to this point, this is a piece of software that I distribute myself. So go check it out. Next story that I want to talk about in this here video is the fact that Ubuntu wants to collect data about your system. This is an article that appeared on the OMG Ubuntu site a few days ago, and this story started circulating around Valentine's Day, and all of a sudden now people are posting videos and blog posts, and there's all kinds of craziness going on about this. So people have actually asked me to comment on it. I tried to avoid it as much as possible, but it got to a point where so many people asked me about this that I went, well, I guess I'm going to have to talk about it now, aren't I? Okay, so basically what Ubuntu wants to do is that when you install Ubuntu on your system, it will build a little report that it will send back to Canonical, and it will give them information about what kind of computer you're using. So it's really basic info. It's not your name, your address, your social security number, your phone number, your whatever. It's none of that. It's just what kind of computer are you using and information about your installation of Ubuntu. Essentially, it's this, which is all of the information that you need to know about my computer that I'm recording this video on right now, and I'm using the Screen Fetch program to show it, and it's just really basic stuff. They want to know what kind of computer it is, how much RAM you have, what kind of processor you're running, what kind of peripherals you have hooked up, how did you partition your hard drive, and that sort of information. It's no personal information that can be linked directly back to you. And you can opt out of it during install. There's going to be a little radio button that you can check, whether you want to do that or not. I personally have no problem with sharing this information with Ubuntu. They've actually been collecting it already through the apport system, which is what happens on Ubuntu when a program crashes and it says, would you like to report the crash so people can work on the problem. It's already been doing it. But what this does is it gives them numbers that are more accurate about how many people are installing Ubuntu, where Ubuntu is being used, and on what kind of equipment. And this will help the developers to target their efforts into the most, the biggest section of the audience and find out audience or user base or whatever you want to call it. An audience? Okay. That's what this is all about. This is not about them trying to collect personal information about you that they can sell to someone else. They have an issue, and all Linux distributions have this same issue, in that they don't register you when you install it. You can go download Ubuntu, you can install it on your computer, and you can start using it. You've never told them anything about you. You haven't told them your name, nothing. There's no registration, and that's great because they respect your privacy. However, it's bad for a company like Canonical that has to work with people outside of the Linux community, hardware vendors, software developers, whatever they have to do, and they don't have any solid numbers to give these people. They can't tell them, well, we have X number of users, because they don't know. And the market share numbers are totally suspicious. I mean, right now, if you go up, look up desktop market share, it'll say that Linux is anywhere between 2 and 6%, depending on what you're looking at. But they're so convoluted and subject to whatever that it's really kind of useless. So it would help them to have this information, which is something that Microsoft has and Mac has, because as soon as you install those things, what's the first thing you got to do? Oh, you have to register. You have to give them all of this information. So, of course, they can say, well, we have X numbers of users, and here's where they are, and this is the equipment they're using. And so you see how that goes. I'm not too terribly concerned about this, and I don't think anybody else should be either. But it is the slow time of the Linux news cycle. This time of year, we're all waiting for Ubuntu 18.04 to come along, and then we'll have plenty to talk about, because Ubuntu is the base for so much that happens in the Linux world. There are so many different distributions that use it for a base, like Linux Mint, Elementary OS, KDE Neon, Zorin, Peppermint, all these people. It all goes back to Ubuntu. So what they do really, really, really makes a big difference. And even for other distributions like Arch and OpenSUSE, they watch what Ubuntu does. So this one is fine with me. And yes, it will ship with 18.04, and you can turn it off. And how that affects other spins that are based on Ubuntu, like Linux Mint, KDE Neon, whatever, whether that will be included in there, I don't know. All remains to be seen. So that's about all I got to say about that particular thing. It's not that big a deal, gang. People are looking for something to talk about, and that's why all of these articles are popping up. And that happens a lot of times in this community, which is really kind of sad. Is like, I mean, I didn't even want to talk about this, because it's just like, it's so clickbaity. It's like, oh, Canonical spying on us again. No, they're not. I just want some information. That's it. You can choose to help them if you want to, or not. And that's what I got to say about that. And now we're going to move on to the third thing that I wanted to talk about here. And we'll get around to the reasons why you shouldn't support anybody who runs Windows ever. But let's start out with where this started out. I got a really nice email from Jamie, who was telling me that he was the person who was, the big tech person in the entire family, and we had got into a big conversation. So a lot of this that I'm talking about comes from that conversation, and also things that I've told other people who have asked similar questions. So Jamie wrote, my father-in-law has a laptop that I installed Windows on and felt horrible giving it back because the specs on it are terribly low. Yes, he's always used Windows, and I felt that was probably the best OS for him. However, lately he has complained about the speed of the laptop, and I really think Linux is a perfect solution. He is an older gentleman and really only uses his laptop for online banking and surfing the web. My main question is, when I install Linux Mint on his PC, is there a way I can connect to it remotely whenever he has issues, much like the Windows remote software or Mac remote assistance? And also, what do you recommend I install to ease his transition? Okay, so to answer your first question, what I use with people is TeamViewer. TeamViewer, T-E-A-M Viewer, and you go to teamviewer.com and you can look at that. I'm not going to link it. It's a commercial website, and I really don't want to link to commercial websites I'm trying to avoid doing that sort of thing. I don't want people to think that I'm sponsored by TeamViewer or something like that. No. It's just a product that I happen to use. It's cross-platform, and it works on Linux, it works on Windows, and you can remotely access those machines in a very private way. In other words, the person on the other end, they install it, they open up a session, they give you a password over the phone or by email, they say okay, and then you establish an encrypted connection between you using their servers as a go-between, so it really doesn't matter whether their machine is behind a firewall or whether it has a static or dynamic IP address. It makes no difference. It's always going to work, and it's really super easy for even dumb people to use, which is why I've used it with folks that I have supported. I've used TeamViewer off and on for probably, well, I don't know, many years. I don't even know when I started. It's been quite a while. And it works. It does a good job, and it will allow you to see the entire desktop, and you will have, you can transfer files, you can do all kinds of stuff with it. And that is what I usually recommend. Of course, if you're going to be working on a computer that is a permanent setup, then you probably want to look into doing something like SSH with X2Go or desktop sharing that's built into Linux Mint. There's some desktop sharing software that's in there, but it has to be configured. You have to have a server running on each end, and I've never even messed with it because I don't even bother with doing that. Trying to get an SSH connection through a bunch of firewalls on the public internet is really difficult to set up. I only use SSH on my systems inside the house, and if I have to get into a machine outside the house, like my mom's computer, my brother's computer, then I will use TeamViewer. Works fine, and when they're done with it, they close it, and it's not running on their system. They don't have anything sitting there waiting for calls to come in. You can set up TeamViewer to do that, but I don't. And as long as you're using it non-commercially, there's no issue with licensing. If you're going to use it in a commercial situation, like you're going to be supporting people that you're going to get paid for it, then TeamViewer, you have to buy a commercial license. Okay? So that's what I use. Now, the next question that was asked here, and this is where it gets interesting, is he said, what can I install to ease him into the transition? And my response to that was you take it very slow. If you use Linux, you like Linux, and you know that Linux is a better solution for somebody, but they're stuck on Windows, they're stuck on Mac, and they don't want to get away from it, the very worst thing that you can do is to take their Windows away from them and go, well, here, give me back that computer, and then reload it, and then put the Linux on it. Linux anything. Linux Mint doesn't make any difference. You hand it back to them, they're going to be lost, and they're going to hate your guts. They're going to be like, I want what I know back, thank you very much. And then that's going to leave a very sour taste in their mouth, and it's probably going to cause all kinds of family drama if it's somebody that's in the family. You don't want to do that. What you want to do is to start transitioning people over and say, okay, well, you want to install, for instance, things like LibreOffice and Thunderbird. If they do email, then bring them over from Outlook to, or not Outlook, but what is it? Windows Mail. I have no idea what the current piece of software is that they use. And you want to start moving those addresses over if they use a mail client, and get them using Google Chrome or Firefox, and set up the sync service so that if you are going to reinstall, that you can make their Google Chrome or their Firefox look exactly the way it did, with all of the same settings and all of the same bookmarks. Because that's the big thing. If all of a sudden you throw at them, well, okay, well, here's a computer that's completely blank, and you don't have any of your old bookmarks and all this other stuff, they're going to be mad at you, and they're going to blame Linux for it. What you want to do is ease them over. So that's what I would do in this situation, is start moving them away from proprietary software and move them toward open source, or something that's cross-platform that you can replicate. Like Google Chrome is not open source, but a lot of people use it. And if you set up the sync service, then if you install it on Linux, you can just grab the stuff and bring it over, and all the same settings and everything. So you see where I'm coming from with that. That's step one. Step two is to get them used to the idea and get them excited about it. And what I used to do with people is I would carry I have a laptop with me when I go places, and it's running Linux Mint, for instance. And then I would, if they expressed interest in it, I would say, here you go. This is what it looks like. This is the interface, and this is how you do that. And you can sit there and demonstrate, because what I have found is, especially people that have used Windows for a long time, and people who have heard a lot of conflicting crap about Linux, because there's so much BS out there about how Linux works and how it runs, and people think that it's hard and you have to get into a terminal every time you want to do something, and blah 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 blah, and none of that crap is true. If you're dealing with Linux Mint or Ubuntu Mate or even Manjaro, those distributions, especially for somebody like Jamie's talking about here, is going to be super easy to use. And then once you get them hooked on that, and you get them realized, then you start slipping it in under the radar that, hey, there's a real easy way to do this. You can just pop open a terminal, you can put in this command, and it works. And that's exactly what I've done with my mother, is that now, when she was running Windows 7, it was a horrible experience for her. The machine was slow, and it didn't work very well, and she's been running Linux Mint now for about 2 or 3 years, and she is so happy with it. And her knowledge of what she does, it's just gone through the roof. I mean, she does things that she's into, all these genealogy sites. And I asked her one time, I said, well, why didn't you do this when you were running Windows? You had Windows running on the machine for years. She said, I was afraid of it. She said, I'm not afraid of Linux. I know that if I click on something, I'm not going to break it. I'm not going to get some horrible virus from whatever I do. And this way, I don't have to do that. And she very rarely calls me for any support. She installs her updates and puts things in. But that transition was really hard, because you were dealing with somebody, my mom is 75 years old. And so you're dealing with somebody that isn't all that computer savvy to begin with. But now she calls me up and goes, hey, do you realize that you could do this? And I go, no, I don't. So, but that transition is very difficult. And you have to take them one step at a time, very slowly. My brother was actually really easy to get onto Linux, because when he was in college back in the 80s, he was actually using Unix. So when I told him that Linux had a lot in common with Unix and a lot of the stuff worked the same, he went directly for a command line system. He wanted Linux Lite with a terminal. He's like, I can do this. I can do anything. And he's done quite well with it. So it depends on the person how you ease them into it, but you definitely want to make it easy for them. You don't want to just, say, throw them a computer and say, here you go, it's Linux, now read the manual and go figure this out. You want to help them along. And the thing about Windows is that what I got to a place where I said that I'm never going to touch Windows again. And I told people, it's like one of the things that is said a lot in the community, and Matt Hartley talks about a lot, and he's dead right about this, is that if you want to help somebody to move over to Linux, they're going to have to get to a point where they're feeling so much pain from their present situation that they're ready to take on the challenge of learning something new. If they're just happy and don't care, and their Windows computer is working just fine, and they don't care about the speed, and they don't care about the privacy concerns and all this other stuff, you're not going to switch them. It's not going to happen, because people are very reluctant to learn anything new or to change if they perceive that what they have is working. However, in this situation, you have somebody who's complaining, well, it keeps crashing, it takes forever to boot up, and blah, 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 and all this other stuff going on. Now you know that Linux is going to be a good solution for them. Now's when you want to work on them because they're feeling that pain. They're feeling that pain. And finally, what put me over the edge and got a lot of people that I work with directly converted to Linux was I flat out told them, I said, look, I can't make Windows work any better for you because it doesn't work on your hardware. It's the system itself is a piece of garbage. And I personally am not going to do this. If you want me to continue to support you, you are going to have to switch over to Linux. I will help you get through that process. We will do it very slowly. And what I did was when I was working with people directly was take the Windows drive out of the machine and then put another drive in it and install Linux and then move the data over and all the settings and everything. And so when they sat down in front of it, it didn't feel that unfamiliar because when they opened up their browser, everything was the same. I had already been working with my mom to get her away from the Windows tools and onto Linux tools because Thunderbird is cross-platform. She has to have a mail client. She's one of those people. She doesn't like webmail. She's like me. So we moved everything over, and I sat down and moved it all over and got her started on Thunderbird. So when it came time to go to Linux, in about a space of an hour, I was able to just move all of her stuff over. And when she sat down in front of the machine running Linux, it felt and looked the same. And like I said, she's done great with it. So, but what finally ended that is that it had got to a point where she asked me to look at it, and I looked at it, and I said, I cannot work with this anymore, and I'm not going to do that. And that was it. It was like, if you want me to continue to help you, then you're going to have to switch to Linux. So I created my own pain point. That was the point of the thing there. And I myself have not had anything to do with Windows in probably 4 years. At one point, I had one machine that had a Windows installation on a separate drive, and then I could boot it up and switch it at the boot menu. And that's probably been about 3 years ago that I finally just dumped that because nobody around here needs Windows. Nobody uses it. Nobody cares. And I hear from people all the time that go, well, I need Windows. I have to have Windows because I've got XYZ software or I play games and I must have it. Well, first of all, games are not needs, they're wants. And as far as, I got somebody who posted a comment on a video not too long ago that said, well, there's just certain things that Linux won't do. What? Show me. Because I will find you somebody who's figured out how to do it with Linux and do it better 9 times out of 10. Now, the catch is you have to learn how to do it. And that's where you get the stumbling block, is that people go, I need to learn how to do something new. Well, I don't want to do that. And so that's the thing. And it doesn't help that there's a lot of just garbage out there about Linux. There's so much misinformation and disinformation. I personally am about sick of banging my head against the wall and trying to fight it. So there you go. But anyway, gang, thank you for watching the video. I certainly do appreciate it. Do check out EzeeLinux on the web. Check out EzeeLinux on Facebook. And check out the new XBT version 2.2. You can check that out at the EzeeLinux page under Bash scripts. And also, I have several other things that are available up there. Little things that you can run in your terminal that are fun to play with. XBT is actually an application that goes in your menu and you can click on it. So, semi-graphical application, halfway between being, like a terminal application and halfway between being graphical. It's pretty cool. I like that. Anyway, like I said, check us out on the web. Links are in the description. Check out freedompenguin.com for lots of really cool stories about Linux from all kinds of contributors like myself, not just me. That's a very cool thing happening over there, and Matt Hartley himself has really stepped up his content creation and adding to the whole thing, so that community is really taking off. That's freedompenguin.com. Links in the description. Check it out. Look forward to your comments. Look forward to your feedback. Thank you so much for all of your likes and comments and subscriptions. It's just amazing how quickly this community is growing. We will do this again soon.